DreAllDay.com.
Dre Baldwin, DreAllDay.com. Let's talk about the right side of history. You'll hear people use this phrase often, especially if you're actually, you can hear this anywhere. I mean, I hear it often on social media. I hear people saying this. You want to be on the right side of history. Make sure you make the right decision when it comes to things like voting. You hear people say stuff like this when it comes to people talking about certain social issues. You want to be on the right side of history. So let's talk about this from a few different angles. First of all this is, when somebody is saying this, is they're trying to emotionally blackmail you. That's what we call this, emotional blackmail. All that means is when you are basically, you're trying to put someone in a position where they have no choice but to make the choice that you want them to make. That's what blackmailing is. So blackmail could be like, if I got a picture of you doing something that you don't want everybody to see that picture, and then I say, all right, if you don't want me to put this picture out, or you want me to delete it, you got to give me $50,000. I blackmailed you in order to get the money out of you. So I'm trying to get you to do what I want you to do, and I'm trying to hold something against you that I think is strong enough to move you to action. So emotional blackmail is when you try to do that. Instead of using something tangible, you use something emotional. So you want to be on the right side of history is me. If I was to say that to you, that'd be like me saying, hey, you don't want to go down in history as being known as the person who voted for Donald Trump because he's racist and he's bad and he posts mean tweets, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of history by voting for that guy. Or you don't want to be on the wrong side of history by not confirming that a man can have a baby and that a girl can turn into a boy because they woke up today and they decide they feel like a boy. You don't want to be on the wrong side of history and not agree with that, because that's how it might turn out. And then people are going to look down on you in the future, 10 generations from now. You don't want people looking down on you as the person who didn't have the right opinion at the right time. So that's emotional blackmail. That's all this is. Whenever you hear somebody use that phrase, the right side of history, or if you have ever used that phrase, that's what you're doing. You're trying to emotionally blackmail another person. And if you have been doing that, you should stop doing that. Let me tell you why this whole phrase is garbage anyway. It's bullshit anyway, whether you have used it or not, or even if you heard somebody else use it and you decided to mentally reject it. Here's why it's garbage. 3 generations from now, so let's say right now you have kids, right? So those are your children. If they have kids, those will be your grandchildren. And then the 3rd generation from now, those will be your great-grandchildren, right? Your great-grandchildren. That's 3 generations beneath you. Those people will barely remember your name, let alone anything that you did. Your kids will know what you did because they saw it, they watched you, or they grew up with you. Your grandkids will have a rough idea of who you are and what you're about. By the time they get old enough to really be able to understand a lot of stuff and remember it, maybe you'll still be alive, but by that point you won't be super active out there, and a lot of the things that you're doing ain't really going to be, by that point you're probably not going to be that super impactful. You'll probably be a much older individual, generally speaking. Now sometimes people, though, they stay alive and kicking for a long time. You think of our last 2 presidents, they're pretty old guys. They probably both have grandkids, and the grandkids are old enough to kind of understand what grandpa is doing. So we could even say your grandkids will know a good amount about you, let's just say. But your great grandkids, the ones that are your grandkids' kids, they're not going to hardly know anything about you. They might remember what your name was, depending on, how much you get talked about, which ain't going to be that much. What you did, they're not going to remember that much of, and even if they're told, they're not really going to care. You know why they're not going to care? Because they got their own lives to pay attention to. They got their own kids to pay attention to. They got their grandparents and their parents to look at, rather than be thinking about you. 3 generations from now, most people on the planet will have no idea who you were, what you did, what you thought, what you stood for, what you didn't stand for, what quote-unquote side of history you were on. None of that shit is going to matter. Nobody's going to care at all. So this whole right side of history is nonsense. As I already told you, I was going to explain to you why. Here's what you should be aiming for. Instead of aiming for being on the right side of history, which doesn't matter at all, what you need to be aiming for is being on the right side of your potential, the right side of what you want to get out of life, the right side of your potential, your abilities, your possibilities, whatever it is that you want to do in life. That's what you want to be on the right side of. That's what you need to be focused on. How can I make sure that I did the most with the opportunity that I had, and I squeezed all the juice out of this orange. That's what you want to focus on, because that's the only thing that really matters. Your kids, yeah, they may honor you and respect you for what you did, and hopefully they will appreciate you for setting them up for success if you're doing that. And your grandkids, maybe a little bit, but your parents will probably get, your kids will get more credit than you will get from your grandkids for whatever it is you did to set them up. Your parents will probably just take all the credit, even if you did all the work. And after that, it's pretty much over. Nobody's going to remember. Nobody's going to be thinking about you. It's again, several generations from now, everybody who's alive today, nobody's going to care about any of us. Name somebody from the 1700s. Just name any human being. Name one person. And tell me 10 things about them without Googling it. You can't name anybody, right? You can't name 10, and even if you could name somebody, if you could name one person, you could just name them, and you could tell me maybe a couple facts, maybe something you read in a history book, but how many people were alive back then? How many people can you name, and what can you remember about them? You barely remember anything. And guess what? We're in the century of the 2000s, right? So that I went 300 years back. So let's just go 300 years from now. So in this century, we're in the century 2000. So then we'll have the 2100, 2200. By the 2300th century, which will be the 24th century, the people who are alive then will not remember you. They will not know your name. They will not know anything about you. There may be a handful of people, maybe a few, who are remembered simply because they were maybe super famous or just some big thing that they did. Even those people only remember like a couple high level points, but the details, people are not going to remember that stuff. They're not going to care, even if they are told to remember, even if it's taught to them. Why? Because they're focusing on their own lives. They're focusing on their own things. You are not that significant to other people. This is the big point that I want you to get. You're not that significant to other people who are alive right now, let alone to people who will be alive 100 years from now. They're not even going to know that you were here. So what you need to be focused on is not being on the right side of history, how history is going to remember you. That's complete nonsense. It means absolutely nothing. History is not going to remember any of us. What you need to focus on is what can you do with the opportunity and potential and abilities that you have right now on this earth today. That's your only mandate, because that's the only thing that really matters. It's the only thing that does matter with you. And when you're gone, everything that you did, everything that you thought, everything that you said, whatever, is going to go with you. It'll all be over. Now, some of you could look at that and say, damn, Dre, that's kind of like a doomsday way of thinking. If all is going to get forgotten when I'm gone, why does it even matter? Why even focus on any of this stuff? Well, there's a good answer to that too. You got two choices. You could either A, make the most of the opportunity that you have right now because it's the only one you have and it'll be gone and most of it's going to disappear like dust when you're dead. Or B, you could do absolutely nothing with the time that you have here and it'll disappear like dust when you're dead. So you might as well do something since you're here. All right, you could do nothing or you could do something. Those are your two options. And that's pretty much the whole game. Now, some of you might look at that as that's not as uplifting as maybe you hoped it would be, but the purpose of this channel right here is not necessarily to uplift you, it's to tell you the truth and give you the game about what's really going on out here, and which I just did. So I fulfilled my promise. Question is, are you going to fulfill your promise? All that said, text me, let me know the best idea, insight that you got from today's video. And once you text me, you'll also be getting my daily motivation text that I send out every day for free. The number to text is 305-384-6894. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That's the place where you get to work with me directly to make sure that you actually maximize that potential and that talent and that opportunity that you have. WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. That's the only place you can be coached by me, only place you get access to all my courses, all my trainings, all our direct work where you can work with me. The only place to do it is as a member of the university. You get into that by going to WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.